Okay, so we already defined the fonts that we're going to have in our application, and then the next thing that you have to define is what are going to be the main colors that you're going to be using. So for color, again, you could create like a whole class just talking about color, and I don't know pretty much anything about color, even though my expertise is in data visualization and we do care about color a lot in there. But color is a complex topic because like one of the things that you have to understand is that actually we don't have a representation of exactly the color that we see in the real world. What we have is what we call color models. So if you take a look at the whole definition in here of color models in Wikipedia, then basically you can see that this is an abstraction of what the real world has in colors, and then we are only going to have parts of that. So in those abstractions, then you could be using something like RGB, which uses a combination of three colors, red, green, and blue, or HSV, which is a different model that uses hue, saturation, and brightness, I think is what it uses. And there is other models in there that you could also use, CMYK, and then cylindrical models. And then one of the things that you have to understand in there is that there are certain characteristics that are all cyclical. So even though the color turns to use things like, for instance, the hue, which is supposed to be representing like the color frequency, the electromagnetic frequency of the color. The problem is that in all of these models, they tend to be cyclical, like as you can see in here, okay? So I'm not going to go into details of that, but for instance, if you take a look in the HSV, you have saturation going in this cyclical part, hue going in the cyclical element, and then you have saturation going from completely white to completely fully saturated color, and then value going from black to fully saturated color, okay, or so fully bright, I guess, or lightness, as you can see in here. It depends on which one you want to use. So there are many color spaces in there, and then as usual, as I'm telling you, like all of them are incomplete, but just choose your poison, okay? In terms of the color spaces, there is also a common chart that you can find, which is what we call the horseshoe of visible color. And then depending on the model that you use, like even if you use within RGB, there are different versions of it, and they can represent certain amounts of it. So just remember that they're going to be smaller. So now that we know how, like what are the different models, and then again, if you wanna play with elements like this, then we can come hopefully here, and then let's say that you want to change the, I don't know, like the background color for this. So if I want to change the background color, the default one that you can use is just use the hashtag, and then when you use hashtag, you can start using colors. And then, I mean, initially you can also go and use like named colors, but then be very careful because like the colors that you use in there could be like very highly saturated. So at least like this light blue is not that bad, but if you put this as blue, it's going to look terrible. And anyone looking at a website is going to say, oh, this person doesn't really pay too much attention to design. So usually you want to come and select like something more specific. And in there, the default model, it is going to be RGB, which is going to say, like for instance, that I want to have like a red color, reddish color. So I'm going to say E00. And basically what I'm using in there is hexadecimal. So basically this is going to be R, G, and B. If you use 2 digits, then you have like more, basically in the first one, it was going from 0 to 15, but now it's going from 0 to 255. So this is the first value, and you can see maybe this editor doesn't let me select, but if you see, for instance, here are the different reddish, and then depending on what colors you want to switch to, you can just switch, for instance, in this case, the hue, and again, like for instance, the bluish colors are going to be more like FF on the last one, RGB. and so on and so forth. So you can select just colors on that. So that is one way in which you can change those elements. There is also, like if you just search for MDN color and then how to specify, you're also going to see that if you want, you can also go and define that I'm going to have a color that is going to be RGB. And then again, I want 00, so this could be a little bit easier for you to understand, and then just see what are the different colors that you're seeing in there. And another one that it's important is that you can also have another one which is RGBA, which is going to have like as the final element, like what is the amount of translucency or of that of your color. So if you see here, for instance, this is going to be a value between 0 and 1. So by this, I say like now it is going to be like 0.6. So for instance, if you go with something like this, that can be also a useful trick for you to make your colors a little bit less strong. If you go into the developer tools, you can also go and see the colors in here, and then just play with different sliders with the actual colors showing up in there. If you want to change the model, like if you want to see it in HSL, you can see that as well in there. And you can change all of the different attributes again, going from 0 to 1, like full translucency versus actually having like a little bit of less of it, of course. So you can change like all of the different colors, although it's usually a good idea unless you know a little bit of what you're doing and you have a very good sense of what colors you want to use. Then it tends to be a good idea just to choose one that is coming from like a predefined palette. And with the predefined palette, it's exactly the next thing that I was talking about in here. So you can use palettes that contain complementary colors or homogeneous colors or triads or analogous colors, etc., or monochromatic. And you can play with all of those. Like the tool I recommend you the best for that is going to color.adobe.co or .com. They keep on changing the name. It used to be color.cc and now has a different name. And then in there, what you can do is that you can create your own color palettes using this color wheel. Again, we are moving around color hue, which is the one that is kind of saying like what is the actual color that you're using. And then inside that color, usually in any of these palettes, you're going to have one color that is the main color, and then all of the other ones are going to be assigned based to that, okay? So if you want to have like a monochromatic palette, it is going to be looking like that. Or actually, let me go and select the color. Like let's say for instance that I like this color. Let me save it in here so I don't lose it, because remember all of these changes were just temporal. And then Adobe Color, and then action, can I if I remove, oh, that's interesting. So let's start in here. Oh, they used to let me, so I cannot, oh, there we go, perfect. I can change the color in here, and then I am going to be using this one. Excuse me. There we go. So now that I have that green color, I can have, and then that's adding like the swatching there, and then I guess I cannot get rid of that. Okay, so usually you can go and say, yeah, I actually want a complementary palette, as you can see in here, and these are going to be all the colors that are generated in there. Let's say that I don't want that many colors, I only have like 5 or something. Then the complementary palette is going to be playing with the color wheel, in the sense that you usually, like if you want to find a color that visually represents the opposite of your main color, let's say that your main color is this green, then this is going to be your like main opposite one, which is actually going to have supposedly good contrast in there. So we can try this one. This is going to be a little bit risky, but let's say if I say that this is going to be the main color for that one, then as you can see, it is definitely standing out in there. Although the only problem is that this might be like a little bit too much. So if you wanna like add in like a little bit like a fourth number, that is going to count as my alpha. So I could ease that up, okay? So, and then you can continue just playing with those elements. Like let's say, for instance, I wonder if this one, which will be the other contrasting one, would be good for this. Just playing with that. Yeah, it's not too contrasty in there. So actually just playing with it. And this is just for fun, okay? Probably that's too many colors, but yeah, you can see like it's generating that high contrast. If you want to make these really subtle, ooh, that's interesting. There we go. So that will be the full color, and then oh, it's too small. Sorry. Oh, I was going too far. Yes. So if I go this one, Copilot is not helping me in there. There we go. And then, oh, there we go. It's just too, it's interesting. It's like it is generating a visual concept in there. Anyhow, so now you have those elements and you can play with that. Now, usually, as you can see, like it can get really complicated. So you can go and say, like, play with other color palettes. Like, for instance, this one, it could be interesting, and then have, for instance, this to be your background color for the whole application, and then having usually it could be like, let's say, for instance, that I am going to have my, I wonder if this one will work. Too much. But like if I go with this one, it's not that terrible. You can keep on playing with that. But the whole idea is that you can go and select your specific color palette, or you can come in here and then just start exploring like the many different palettes that they have in there, and then just start going in with something like that. Okay. You can have like the different colors that they have in there. Like, for instance, if I say that I want to go with this one, and then probably let's see if I see something like that, and then having, yes, there we go. And at the very least, in your background color, like if you don't want to go with a very colorful one, then just try using like something that is not completely white. So at least it's changing a little bit that, or you can go and start like getting into one of the other colors. So for instance, in this case, I'm guessing something around here could be interesting. And again, just putting like a subtle tone in there, that's getting a little bit better. So you can play with it. And then the final thing that you can do in here is that you can also create and extract a theme out of an image. So I love taking photos, so I have a ton of different photos on my computer. So for instance, these ones in here. So if I have that photo that I took, you can just enter that in there, and this can give me like an interesting color palette that you can play with on your side. So for instance, I could have these for the different headers, and then maybe this one, I wonder if that will work, for the text And then, as you can see in there, it starts getting like into a certain theme. And ideally, I still want to see if I can pull this one up. So let's see if I say with the background color with something like this. That one is going to be super strong, yes. And then like let's ease this up like a little bit, like making it like way lighter, something like this. Maybe there we go. So even more, something like that. So it is a little bit more readable. And maybe this one we want to keep with the other one. There we go. So now you can have like a more basic element, and we can say that, I don't know, for instance, if I create a button in there, and then I can say that my button is going to have the color. I wonder if this one is going to work. Probably will this one work? Maybe not, but we'll see. And then and then of course we need to put some text in there, and background color, and then do it like this. So now this is kind of like calling a little bit more for your attention. You will also have to change the borders and elements like that, but that's kind of like the whole idea of that. And remember that you also get a lot of colors directly from Bootstrap, so just learn how to combine that. So for your project, you need to define what is going to be your typography, but you also need to define what are going to be the different color palettes that you use. So choose a color palette. You can be a little bit more conservative than what I went in here, but make sure to choose it and to be using that palette to reflect exactly what you want with your application.